Angling 360's idiot's guide to grayling. The lady of the stream, and most definitely one of our favourite fish to target through the colder months. Stunning, stunning looking fish. I think they must be one of the nicest fish that swim in our waters. They're quite widely distributed around the world, and there's different sort of subspecies of grayling. The grayling that we target in the UK are European grayling, but there's other species. I'm sure there's some species in the Alps, and then you've got your Arctic grayling in Canada, Scandinavia, things like that. But yeah, the European grayling, Timalis, I think because apparently it smells of thyme. I think it smells a wee bit more like cucumber, but what a fish, absolutely stunning. Massive big sail-like dorsal fin, particularly on the male fish. Females are still stunning, but yeah, slightly smaller, more squared, sort of rectangular dorsal fin. But I love them. They must be one of my favourite fish. And the methods that we use through the winter to target them are definitely one of my favourite as well. So yeah, Idiot's Guide to grayling. Grayling are fairly well spread out across the UK, and I'm sure they can be targeted in most of the countries in the UK, but we fish in Scotland, so Scotland is what we'll talk about when it comes to location, where to target these stunning fish. There's loads of rivers in Scotland that hold grayling. We fish a few, but rivers such as the Tay, the Tummel, the Erne, the Teith, the Clyde, some of the Ayrshire rivers, but the Borders rivers and the Dumfries and Galloway rivers, they're the big four. That's really where you want to focus your attentions if you want those specimen fish. So the big four, of course, are the River Annan, the Nith, the Teviot and the Tweed. Those four, best chance of that specimen sized fish. Now when we speak about specimen sizes, I suppose that depends on what river you're fishing, but you want to take the British record and divide it by 2. That gives you a sort of rough idea of what's regarded as a specimen fish. So as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong here, correct me if I am, the British record grayling is over £4. I think it might be around about £4.6 or thereabouts. I could be wrong. So we're thinking £2, £2.3 is a specimen sized fish. But in these 4 rivers, these big 4, you're talking specimens in excess of £2.5, close to £3, £3 being that holy grail. So once you've picked what river you want to fish, how to go about fishing it, that is the key. And there's no easy way. You've got to travel light and you've got to walk. And that's Gordon's favourite part of grayling fishing. If you watched our previous videos, you'll know that all too well. But yeah, travel light. Try and have everything on you. Rucksack, small rucksack on your back. A jacket with some pockets so you have spools of line. You can have your hooks, your split shot, a couple of extra floats. But yeah, have it all on you. You definitely need waders. Get a pair of waders on there because you'll be in and out that river all day, and there's more than a good chance that you'll be walking a good few miles as well. So make sure you're feeling energetic. And the areas you're looking for on these rivers, it really comes down to your preference. Look for areas that give you confidence. Watercraft. Now, watercraft is something that can only really be learned over time with experience. And it's really difficult for us to suggest where to look. But areas that we quite like are sort of longer, I think it's laminar water, laminar flow, where there's very little turbulence in the water. Kind of long, steady flows, preferably downstream of a bend. You've got a stretch of water downstream of a bend, you tend to have different lanes of water speed. On the inside, you'll have nice slow water, and then as you push out to that outside, the pace of the river picks up a little bit, and the depth tends to pick up a little bit on the outside of a bend. So areas just downstream of a bend tend to be our sort of go-to areas. I'm not too keen on fishing on bends as an actual feature themselves. It's quite hard to control a float trotting down a bend, and the water can be quite turbulent on a river bend. So yeah, just below it, where you've got slow water, meeting slightly quicker water, spend a little bit of time. Don't spend too long in one area. If there's fish there, the chances are you'll get an indication fairly quickly. If not, get out and walk, find the next good looking area, search that whole stretch of river, find the hot spots, and bank them. So without making this too complicated, once you've got a likely looking area, or before you even get on the river really, let's backtrack a little bit. Before you even get on the river conditions are key in grayling fishing. So important. Obviously with safety is really important. You need to make sure that the river's in a safe condition for wading. But in terms of the actual fishing, you really don't want colour. You don't want colour in the water. You don't want too much colour in the water. We've made that mistake on a few occasions, and it's been a bit of a lost cause. And you don't really want a rising river. Again, we've made the mistake there before. As soon as that river begins to rise, I've got this little thing in my head that the grayling think, here, a flood's coming, quick, take cover. I could be completely wrong, I ain't no grayling. But yeah, that rising coloured water, bit of debris really puts grayling off. So what we're looking for, ideally, is a steadily dropping river with good clarity, and you're maximising your chances. Conditions in every type of fishing, no matter what you do, are always key.
So Alex has covered where to go if you're after a grayling. Now the methods, now if you've been following A Winter's Tale, you'll be aware that we did dabble a little bit on nymphing, but I'm certainly not in any position to be talking about how to nymph or fly fish, whatever you want to call it, for grayling. Where we do have a lot of success in is the long trotting maggots and bramlings. What are they called again? Brandlings. We'll stick with worms, right? And we've had a lot of success with this method. I enjoy it, I really do. It reminds me of when I was a kid, back in East Kilbride, on the River Calder, my wee pound float out of the local shop and trotting a worm I dug up in the garden and catching a wee wild brown trout. It just takes me back to when I first started fishing. So I really enjoy that. I do get a row off Alex quite a lot because I like to trot the float for as far as I can see. And that then brought us on to the type of rods that we were using. I actually started using it with my feeder rod to decide to actually like grayling fishing. And then I went on and I bought a kind of introductory level kind of budget rod, float rod. And it was like 12 foot long, and I'd always break the tip. And I ended up fishing a whole season with a broken rod, but it worked. And then I decided I want a good quality rod, and that's when I purchased the Adventus 15 foot. Now what the longer rod does, it allows you to get the line up off the water when you're striking. And that's a good point that Alex and I had discussed on one of our recent trips. The fish you tend to hook at distance are the ones you tend to lose more than if you catch them at your feet. Now, I don't know how many times we've popped the float in the water, a rod's length out, bang, you're into a fish. So don't rule out fishing close to where you're standing as well, and then trotting your float down the areas that Alex had touched on. I like a big float, purely for the visuals, for the distance. Alex likes a more smaller, slimmer, lighter style float. Your shot patterns can vary. You can also use as an olivet as well. But I think one of the most important things that I didn't do, and I think it took him a bit of season to realise that I wasn't doing it, was your hook link to the swivel. That swivel is so important. And when Alex had realised that I wasn't using it, the swivel prolongs the use of your rig, your setup throughout the day. Because when you're bringing your float back in, the maggot's spinning the water. And if you've not got that swivel, your line, then before you know it, you're in a big tangle, you're standing at the side of the bank, and a wee cream puff trying to untangle tangles. And so the swivel, for me, is probably the best bit of advice in grayling fishing that I've received for Alex, because you set up in the morning and it lasts all day, unless you get snagged, obviously. Hook sizes is another interesting subject. I've been criticised for using too big a hook in the past. I like to use a 14 wide gate. Alex likes to use the daft wee wiry numbers. Kamisan wide gate 16s. Alex likes to use 2 maggots. I like to use a big bunch. So I think that comes down to your own personal preference. I have used size 12s when I've been fishing the worm. You can get a size 12 worm hook. But the worm baits produced one of my PBs of £2.13. And that day, using the worm, I had my best day on the river. I think I caught something like 7 fish, including £2. I think all the fish were over £2.5, if my memory serves me right. And one of them being a £2.13 fish. So don't rule out the worms. There are other baits people try that I've heard of, but we'll not get into that. But the methods: float fishing, long trotting, pick the float that suits, pick the shot pattern that suits, and pick a hook that suits. But the only way you're going to catch it is if that bait is trundling along the bottom of the river, and you might be fortunate enough to catch one.
So when it comes to the technicalities of how to fish for grayling, Gordon's covered the majority of it. But just going back to one little point that I think is quite interesting personally, and he did touch on it, the shotting pattern, a source of great debate. The majority of people, when they fish for grayling or when they trot for anything, they'll use either a bulk shot, a load of shot squeezed together, or an olivette. An olivette can be a running weight that runs on the line, either sandwiched in place with a couple of float stops, or you can get interchangeable olivettes that clip onto a stem that runs on the line, and you can change the weight of your olivette depending on the conditions. However, in the majority of the situations that we find ourselves grayling fishing, the water isn't really that deep. You're talking about 3, 4, 5 foot at a push, but you're probably talking between 3 and 4 feet. So my go-to shotting pattern, to try this, give it a go, see what you think yourself, is more of a sort of strung out, shirt button style shotting pattern, but in a sort of progressive way. Now what I mean by progressive is, the closer we are to the float, the shot are fairly close together, maybe about an inch, inch and a half. But as we get closer towards that swivel, that all-important swivel that Gordon mentioned, the space between the shot get bigger as we go down. And what that allows me to do, or what I think it allows me to do, is just hold that bait back a little bit more to allow it to kind of flutter up in the water. You want your bait, on the majority of occasions, as close to the bottom as possible. But on the odd occasion, grayling will come up off the bottom, and if they see something, they'll come up and go, well, I'll take that. So having that bait just kind of rise up in the water, just by holding the float back slightly, it's easier to do with a strung out shot pattern than it is with an olivette or bulk. If I was then to go into a slightly deeper water, then yeah, stick a bulk on just to get that bait a little bit closer to the bottom. On the theme of being able to hold back your bait, that might influence your reel selection as well. Gordon mentioned there about the rod. The longer the rod, the better. 15 foot is probably optimum. You could, if you really wanted, you could go a little bit longer. But yeah, 15 foot's ideal. But a centre pin reel also gives you a little bit of an added advantage in terms of control, how you can control that float as it trots down the river. All you need to do is graze the rim. Slightest little graze in the rim, it just slows the reel down and allows that bait to kind of drift out in front of the float, right up in the fish's face basically. And it sometimes spurs them on to take the bait. So yeah, shot pattern, have a play around with it, find out what works for you. If you can, I thoroughly advise, if you're going to do any trotting, get a centre pin. They are fantastic. They're not for everyone. I personally would opt for a centre pin over a fixed spool reel on the majority of occasions. Oh, that feels good. That feels good. So once you've got your setup exactly how you want it, you're controlling that float, that bait is just floating up in the fish's face. What bait would you use? That's probably the next thing to look at. But again, you've got to kind of backtrack a little bit and think about that before you go fishing. Maggots. Maggots, everyone's go-to bait for grayling. It's my go-to. 2 maggots. I prefer the red ones. Don't know why, but I just think they produce the results, probably because I use them more than I would do anything else. Worms, little red worms, little brandlings that Gordon's mentioned, they produce fish now and again. But there's a few sort of more obscure baits that you can use. Say for example, spur of the moment grayling trip. Forgot to get bait. A tin of sweet corn will do the trick. Pomegranate seeds are one that not too many people know about. But if you think about it, pomegranate seed, little sort of purpley, reddy sort of sphere, looks exactly like a salmon egg. That's what grayling are eating at this time of year. So yeah, options on your bait there as well. If you can get maggots, go for it. Take the odd little tub of worms with you there as well. But sweet corn, pomegranate seeds, also an option. But before you decide on some of the more obscure baits, check your permit. Check what baits are allowed on the river that you've decided to fish. Some rivers are a wee bit more strict than others.
Well, we've covered how we go about our grayling fishing. We were no saying you're an idiot, but we've called it an idiot's guide for a bit of fun. But there's no much point in having a guide in how we go about catching fishing without a bit of showboating. Now this is where we show the results. We've had some brilliant days on the river. We've had some terrible days on the river. Me personally, I've had more than what Alex has had. Off the top of my head, I think he's had 2 blanks. I think I've had 6 or 7 days where I'm watching him catch fish. I'll tell you, it is frustrating. It's one of the most frustrating things. You're fishing next to each other, you're fishing exactly the same way, and your mate's catching all the fish. It rips my knitting. And all this, it's just good to be out. It's a crap day's fishing, it's a better than a day at work. No, it's no. Stop talking nonsense, please. In my opinion, I go fishing to catch fish, and I want to catch the biggest fish of that species that I'm targeting. Because that's the goal of fishing, isn't it? You set targets every time you go out, you set targets. Now, our target was a 3-pound grayling or above. Before we started this YouTube venture, it was £2. I remember when Alex started to go, do you fancy a bit of grayling fishing? I said, I've not done it since I was away, but aye, let's give it a go. £2 was the magical number for Alex. He'd never got that £2 fish. And I remember the first time we went to the river together, and it seemed £2 was impossible because every fish that we weighed was £1.15, £1.15. I think he had 5 £1.15 fish back to back, and it was like, what do we need to do? And then lo and behold, it's felt that every time we went down to the river, £2-pounders were, you're catching a £2.3 fish. It was easy. No, it came across that way, that it was easy. Some of the fish that we've caught, the £2.5 and beyond, getting close to the £3, up to the £2.15 mark, £2.13 is it? It was our previous PB. Still is our PB. Because if you watched the kind of second last episode of A Winter's Tale, we called it the Forgotten Scales. It still kills me not knowing to this day. It was a few months ago now. One prize catch in the sun. And unfortunately, the name would suggest that I left the scales in the wrong fishing bag. Now we have 3 sets of scales that we take everywhere with us, and we've always got a set of scales to hand. If that fish was £3, or it was more than £3, we'll never know. But what it was the biggest grayling that we've ever seen and we've ever caught. I say we because it's a team effort at the end of the day. You know what I'm like when I hook a big fish of any species? I'm a bag of nerves. I have to get Alex to net it for me. And I just love my fish, and I just get so invested in that moment, and it's what you aim for, is to have the moments in fishing where you're kind of, after it's happened, it's like the adrenaline dump. I spoke to Jerry after he caught his big pike, and that's what he said. He almost felt ill. Just that adrenaline rush and the happiness and everything else that comes with it. And then when that goes, you're like, wow, what just happened? And I've got to admit, I think that's what I chase. That moment where you've caught that special fish. Whether it's a grayling, a roach, a pike, a sea trout, a barbel, a chub, whatever it may be. That is why I go fishing. It's the chase of that buzz, that rush that you get when you finally hook into that special fish.
He's shooting. Shooting line.
I will need a bigger net.
Shush, man.
Oh, it's not far off. So there we go. An idiot's guide to grayling fishing.
I don't know what one's idiot, but
Grayling themselves, the location. the conditions of the river, the tactics, the methods, the bait, the rods, the reels. As much info as we could possibly squeeze into this little short video.
What I will say is, everything that we've spoke of is what he's taught me, and I can say it works. It's produced me some memorable fish with the lessons I've learnt from Alex.
But definitely no experts. Always learning. We're always learning. Everyone always learns on the bank. But it's just a case of getting out there and enjoying it. No, whatever your aims are, whatever your goals are, he's after a big fish.
Catch a big fish.
I just like to be out.
Honestly, that rubs my nut in that, so it does. It does.
It's all about the fish. That's why we go fishing. For the results, the end results. In this case, it is fish. So all that's left to say, I think, is
Thanks for watching.
I hope this helped.
Hope
And
it
yeah,
helped,
thanks
aye.
for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you on the river, maybe.
Hopefully. Get on the river. Give it a go. Brilliant.